If this Muslim scholar is correct about this Bible verse, then it means you as a Christian are dishonoring Christ and need to follow Muhammad today. So we're going to watch what he has to say, and then we're going to see David Wood brilliantly expose the lies live on stage.
Was Muhammad's name mentioned in the gospel, and do Christians have to follow his teachings?
Muhammad's name is not mentioned in the Gospels as we have them now. The Quran says that Jesus had preached to his people saying, one will come after me, ismuhu Ahmad, whose name is Ahmed. And Ahmed in Arabic comes from the same root as the word Muhammad, meaning somebody who is praised. And Muslims think that this is an equivalence, that when Jesus spoke of Ahmed, he was speaking about our Prophet Muhammad, on whom be peace, as depicted in the Quran. Now, in the Gospels, obviously Jesus has been taken as the be-all and end-all. Everything from the Old Testament was interpreted to make Jesus the be-all and end-all. So for the writers of the New Testament, there is no prophet to come after Jesus. But that doesn't mean that that was the fact, and that doesn't mean that that's what Jesus himself preached. In fact, we are finding clues in the New Testament that Jesus may have spoken about someone to come after him. We've already seen that John the Baptist was speaking about someone to come after himself, who is greater than both he and Jesus at the same time. Did Jesus speak about somebody? Yes. Jesus apparently spoke about a paraclete, and in Syriac, if this was written without any vowels, it would be paraklutos, or could be paraklutos, which means the same Ahmed, one who possibly is praiseworthy. But even if we take the Greek word paraclete and we analyze the statements carefully in John chapter 14, 15, and 16, it looks like this is pointing to another human being. John chapter 14, verse 26 specifically says the Holy Spirit, but that is thought by some to be a later corruption.
All right, well, since we're going to this passage, very interesting. So in John chapter 14, verse 16, Jesus says, I will ask the Father, and he will give you another helper, paraclete here. There's no manuscript that says paraklutos, that he may be with you forever. That is the Spirit of truth. So Jesus immediately clarifies who he's talking about. He's talking about the Spirit of truth. Now, why is this interesting? Well, if you go over to who sends him, John chapter 16, verse 7, Jesus says, but I tell you the truth, it is to your advantage that I go away. For if I do not go away, the Helper will not come to you. But if I go, I will send him to you. So, you Muslims, you believe that Jesus sent Muhammad? Jesus is the one who sent Muhammad? Who's the one who sent Muhammad? That's Allah, right? All right, well, Jesus says he's the one who sends the Helper. If I go away, I will send him. So if Jesus is the one who sends the Helper sent by Jesus, according to this passage, if you say the Helper is Muhammad, and Muhammad is sent by Allah, well, guess what? If the Helper is sent by Jesus, and Muhammad is sent by Allah, and the Helper is Muhammad, who would that make Jesus? If the Helper is sent by Jesus, and Muhammad is sent by Allah, and you're saying that the Helper is Muhammad, who would that make Jesus?
He's really spinning it out.
Jesus, Allah. So be careful how you use these passages.
Now, I love how Shabir Ali is clapping there as if he didn't just get caught making the biggest logical blunders and outright lying live on stage. Now, David Wood pointed out the obvious logical problem that Muslims fall into if you want to say Jesus was prophesying Muhammad. But even in Shabir Ali's presentation, there are some glaringly obvious problems. Would Jesus really prophesy Muhammad? I mean, Jesus being a man of purity, would he prophesy a man who just constantly acquired women to satisfy his own lusts, including, a child as young as 6? Jesus, a man of peace, would he prophesy a man who conducted over 80 different wars with his followers? Jesus, a man of selflessness, would he prophesy a man who was constantly raiding different caravans and taking their possessions? I mean, the character consistency just isn't there. But are the scriptures even on Shabir Ali's side? His whole argument rests on the idea that this word for helper, which in Greek is parakletos, was corrupted. That it was initially meant to be parakletos, which translates to celebrated one, even though there is zero evidence for that. But let's even assume the originals did actually say parakletos, which happens to be the root word for Ahmad in Arabic. What would that change? Because Arabic is a language that comes or develops hundreds of years after the time that Jesus is speaking. So you can't just go and retroactively project meanings for you and your language onto Jesus, who is speaking in a completely different language. That's absolutely insane. It would be like me saying that when the song Hickory Dickory Dock was first written down in 1744, that what they really meant to say is that a bunch of Logitech mouses was running up and down these digital clocks, because that's what the word comes to mean for me when I use English, even though it didn't mean that for them in the language they spoke. That's not how prophecies work. You can't just project words that have a meaning for you onto what Jesus was saying. Of course, Jesus was speaking about the Holy Spirit, because it's made very clear in that same verse, even the Spirit, who he's referring to. And this is another reason why you can't believe the lie that the Bible has been corrupted, because Jesus promised that his Holy Spirit would guide his disciples into all truth. And because Jesus Christ died and rose again and reigns in the heavens, Jesus Christ is the guarantor of his scriptures. Jesus Christ is the one, by his Holy Spirit, that makes sure that the scriptures we have, the scriptures that were revealed to his apostles, that were inspired by God for his disciples to write down, have been preserved, and that what we have is trustworthy. And now the thousands and thousands of different manuscripts that we have help us see what the original scriptures said. So even though those original papers or papyrus, parchment may have been lost, the text that was in them is very much still alive today and read by billions of Christians around the world. Let me know in the comments, have you noticed this very common Muslim tactic, which is to throw out smoke screens and try and force the Quran or force Muhammad or force Allah in when nobody is watching? They'll say that the Bible is full of corruptions, and they'll point out all of these obscure passages where maybe there are some scribal mistakes, or where there were clearly some stories that may have been added to later manuscripts that don't significantly change the theology of the text. So for example, the woman caught in adultery in John chapter 8, they'll point to some of these passages as evidence of corruption, but they never seem to have the evidence of the things that supposedly prove their claims. For example, in this video where Shabir Ali says the word parakletos was a substitution for what should have been there, where's the evidence? Why is there no manuscript evidence that happens to say that? Why is there absolutely nothing except for just having to take your word for it that we can turn to give some sort of confidence that maybe that was the case? Why is that? Well, it's because they don't really believe that the Bible has been corrupted. Do they actually believe this? And if they do, when did they start to believe this? Because was this the belief that Muhammad had when he was roaming around in the Arabian Peninsula, telling people that he's basically confirming what the previous scriptures had said? Is that when they started to believe it? Because we have copies of the scriptures that they had access to at the time. You can even look up the Syriac Peshitta, which would have been most likely the Bible in circulation around that period of time. And it happens to have all of the gospel accounts that we have, including most of the New Testament letters that we have today. Some of them are disputed, but the point still being that every single claim that we as Christians believe today about Jesus and about the Holy Spirit and about God, we have access to what the Christians of Muhammad's time would have had. So it's very clear that it wasn't around then that this belief the Bible was corrupted emerged. Otherwise, Muhammad wouldn't have said, I'm confirming what the scriptures say. If you're in doubt about what I have to say, read the scriptures of what the people, read the scriptures, or go to the people who had the scriptures before you. Muhammad wouldn't have said these things. But it goes to show that at some point in time, there must have been a little bit of confusion. And that's really the whole lie that Islam is built on. And if you want to see that lie exposed brilliantly, check out the video on your screen. I'm sure you'll be blessed by it. I'll see you there. Peace and blessings.